And then to Roswell, was that one of our craft?
Well, I don't know. The evidence that I have personally been able to get from people involved in Roswell does support that. One man died, a pilot that flew parts of the remains back to Fort Worth, and his son and I talked about it, and before his dad died on his deathbed, he did say to him, after years of silence, he did tell his son, yes, they were aliens, they did crash, and it is real. Now, if you'd have known his father, this particular pilot, he was one of the kind of old school that was very patriotic and just would not break the confidentiality on it until he was on his deathbed. I also, when I was a teenager in Dallas, before I joined any of these projects and that kind of stuff, just a normal kid, was visiting a friend of mine where they flew the bodies. And we were sitting in this kid's living room, he and I, in the afternoon, and another guy with us, another kid. And we were talking about, ghost stories and one-upping each other. And he said, well, I can top all this because my dad flew a plane back with bits and pieces I've actually held from a crash flying saucer in Roswell. And he described the gear ratios, the 9-tooth ratios and that kind of stuff, and how the metal was in layers and that you could peel off with a knife. And, I kind of passed it off like kids do, that, well, okay, that's a good story. But when you put it together with other first-hand participants telling me this, or their sons this, and passing it to me, it does indicate to me that there was an alien ship that did crash, one, maybe two at that time. And I think that they are the bad guys being set up as bad guys by the other part of bad guys is pretending to be good guys. If that sounds convoluted, but I think it's all part of the overall plan I was telling you about, and not just some accidental alien presence here. They're super beings. They certainly are superhuman beings, and but they are fallible. They can break. They can die, and this is it all fits with what I've studied in prophecy as well. So, yeah, Roswell did occur.
That's fascinating, Stan. Thank you.
You bet.
Round one, do you have a question for Stan?
Yeah, wow, I'm just listening to all the technology you found yourself stumbling into. I, in 73, was winding up my own 5-foot Tesla coil and hoping I wasn't going to blow everybody else up at Science Fair. Stan, in your Gemstone Scrolls, Part 1, you explain in detail the 169-year-old Armstrong wine glass experiments. It appears you have spent a lot of time recreating and analyzing those results. From that research, you've developed some powerful and yet straightforward mathematical formula. Some of these allow anyone to express the electrical variables, current, resistance, and voltage in terms of classical Newtonian MLT values. That's mass, length, and time. The work is simply staggering, something which should be taught to every young scientist, engineer, or physicist on the planet. Actually, anyone who has learned basic algebra and geometry should be taught these as the new physics of reality. For purposes of this interview, could you please summarize the wine glass experiment for our listeners? And could you help us visualize why the returning remnant power, P sub R, equates to electrical current in equation 26, as well as marvel with us for a moment over how voltage becomes a dimensionless number expressed as nothing more than a ratio. Thank you.
Wow. I haven't even looked at the paper, in detail in several years, so I don't know what equation 26 is. But let me say, first of all, on the Lord Armstrong experiment, he had a steam boiler that he found that the steam ejecting out of it, out of a particular shaped nozzle, would generate tremendous high voltages, direct current high voltages that he could use in his experiments with electricity. Now, these experiments are being reproduced now on the Internet. I've seen a number of videos of people duplicating the first parts of his experiment, where they have 2 glasses of distilled water and run a direct current, high voltage current into one glass, and it forms a water bridge, like a wire, but it's of water, over to the second glass. Now, I have not seen it on the internet where they've had close-up pictures and used dust or pepper or powder of some sort to show the motion of the water inside that connecting tube that goes between the 2 glasses. But let me back up and explain what this is from in Armstrong's experiment. He found that he could take 2 wine glasses and put them touching each other and put distilled water in them and run electricity into one glass, and he could cause the electricity to make water climb up the edge of that glass and over the lip of the other glass and down into the water of that glass. Now, several things he tried. First, he took a silk thread and he taped it to the bottom of the first glass and let that thread hang over the lip, so where the 2 glasses were touching, so that the water could well up over that silk thread and surround it, and it kind of expand a bit, and he could then pull the glasses apart with that silk thread in the middle of a channel of water around the outside of it. Now, remember that silk thread was taped down. Now, he did that so that he could see this arc of water going over the wire into the second glass, which was grounded. It was earthed. When he untaped the silver or the silk thread on the first glass, when he let it flow freely, it would be jerked out of its glass over into the other glass, and what would remain would be a thread of water where the silk thread used to be. There'd be a thread of water, a tube of water hanging in the air between the 2 glasses. And they were only about, an 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch apart. I think he was around 50,000 volts DC that he was using, but with a fairly high current one. Now, he determined by experiment and putting like pepper and other ash and things into the water that there were 2 currents running simultaneously between those glasses. One as an inner core in that bridge of water, and the other was an outer core in that bridge of water. And the currents were in opposite directions, even though it was a direct current exchange. This led to him doing a number of other experiments as well, finding that when he anchored that silk thread, he could drain one glass into the other as long as that silk thread was anchored or taped to the bottom of the initial glass. Again, if he undid it and let the water flow, the levels would stay the same in the 2 if that water bridge was allowed to be there and no silk thread was involved at all. These experiments without the silk thread are being shown on the internet in a number of YouTube videos. Now, I think you can just search for water, glasses, bridge, high voltage, or something like that, and find them. There were several I found when I looked here a couple of weeks back. The observations that I made showed, by analyzing the fact that the volume of water in both glasses did not change as long as there was no silk thread anchored down. It was an exchange of water. The volumes were the same, but the speed at which the inner core of the water and the outer core of the water, that speed was different. And so I tried to analyze that and figure out how, and you'll see in the drawings I've done, explaining equal volumes of water being exchanged, but at different speeds, as far as the chunk that drops off into the host glass and into the receiving glass. By analyzing the flow of energy density on the water, I was able to explain missing or the mystery of how you can have a circuit, electric circuit, running resistances, but still have stuff going back in to the main battery that's powering the circuit. There's always energy left over. You don't have it all being absorbed. And I was able to explain that missing part by the inertia and the momentum of the water portions moving in that bridge of water. The voltage, I've looked at tornadoes, which are big versions of the Armstrong tube. The voltage becomes a ratio of the diameter of the inner core tube and the outer tube surrounding it, and it's just a pure ratio. a ratio of energy exchange, if you wish. So it's a dimensionless thing, but a ratio, and I'm saying.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's a very crude explanation. That's why it took me so many pages and equations and drawings to explain it in the paper. You got to rearrange your thinking in your mind. It's no longer mysterious charge action at a distance through nothingness, or magnetic field through nothingness. It's saying there is inertia in the fluid of space, and it's all MLT equation, just like you said. It just makes things so much more understandable in the real world.
Yeah, equation 26 brings us to Ohm's law, and you're equating current with the remnant power, P sub R, and
the returning power.
I was having trouble with making that mental leap between physical process and the electrical world mathematically.
Well, again, if you use Maxwell's version of electric charge and action at a distance, he sets up a scenario where you've got two electrons at a certain distance from each other, and that they will exhibit force on each other because of their electric nature. He doesn't explain this electric nature, but if you see the electric, quote-unquote, electric nature as spin in a fluid of space, then you've got angular momentum, you've got linear momentum, you've got things that you can play with that are just real effects in a solid fluid space. Then hydrodynamic equations without magic, just flow equations and the relative spin equations, then become the tools that you use to visualize and operate on electricity, or the exchange of energy. The power going one way must equal the power going the other way, but the energy density of that power is different. The energy on the atoms involved in the transfer of energy. It's like, imagine the atoms in one glass spinning faster and being allowed to share their spin with the slower atoms in the other glass, which is grounded. The energy must exchange. You never create or destroy energy. You exchange energy. And so you can have energy in one form, which is the flow of energy at a certain speed, and the flow of a number of particles generate energy, and less particles at a higher speed to generate the same power. That's how the PR and the primary energy can be related by energy density.
Thank you. I have just one more question, I guess. On page 16, you say, in essence, these equations are a portal to better understanding of the universe around us. In the following two parts of this paper, that portal will become even larger. Stan, please whet our appetite for more information about any upcoming releases of the Gemstone Scroll papers.
All right. Well, I was hoping to have released it by now, the second part, which is on gravity, because of the profound implications of the organizing or containment gravity field theory, which is a secondary, weaker force that NASA has observed but didn't know where it came from. And that's the one I'm addressing at the moment because it has immediate implications in propulsion and understanding our solar system and various other things that are happening with our planet and the Earth changes that are about to occur and started now. The third part of the paper will be probably a year off because that is